place will not feel safe anymore for that animal. If you do have an outside food source, such as a green bin, if you feed your cats outside, or if you have a bird feeder, you might want to consider securing or even taking them away. If you have to remove an animal, we do ask that you do so humanely and use a very humane wildlife removal company. Choose a wildlife removal company that is aware of the biology of the wildlife. For example, in the spring and summer months, unfortunately, a lot of baby animals are actually orphaned. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call. We'll be happy to answer them. But other than that, we hope that you enjoy your wild neighbors.
Welcome to Brampton Fire and Emergency Services Fire Life Safety Education Center, home of Stephanie's Place.
At our center, our 75-minute program combines technology, hands-on learning experiences, and a classroom-style setting in a fun and safe environment.
Our main classroom is modeled after a typical home, and what we do is that we encourage children to come into this home and to find potential fire and safety hazards. And with that, they go back home with their families and they show them and teach them what they learn. One of the things I like to ask the students is, are your parents here? And if your parents aren't here, how are they going to learn about what you're learning? What do you have to do? Go home and tell them.
Working with both school boards in the region of Peel, the Stephanie's Place program complements the Grade 1 and Grade 4 curriculum.
Using our 4 smart tables and a smart board, students learn fire safety through a number of game-based applications.
We are supported by Brampton Council and city leadership, and it is this support that helps us bring free programming and free busing to our local schools and community groups.
Students are very excited to be experiencing something outside of the classroom. It's one thing to have the learning going on in class, but they seem to get more out of it when it's outside of the classroom. So I think that they'll remember more of this than they would of something in class.
We love what we do here. In our partnership with the city, school boards, teachers, schools, and community groups, together we're making Brampton a safer place to live.
Excuse me, ma'am, can I have your license and, what? Huh. See your Brampton license, nice job. Did you know that your City of Brampton license is the most visible thing when the dog's found on the street? As an animal control officer, this helps us get little Fluffy home and back to you safe. Minimizes the amount of stress to not only you as the dog owner, but also the dog or the cat that comes into our shelter. It's the safest way and the best ticket for your animal home. Excuse me, ma'am, can I have your license and, what? Huh. City of Brampton license, nice job. Did you know that your City of Brampton license is the most visible thing when the dog's found on the street? As an animal control officer, this helps us get little Fluffy home and back to you safe. Minimizes the amount of stress to not only you as the dog owner, but also the dog or the cat that comes into our shelter. It's the safest way and the best ticket for your animal home.
It's back to school time and kids aren't the only ones who'll have to brush up on their ABCs. Remember, be alert when driving in school zones. Follow the speed limit, watch for flashing 40 km/h signs, and obey no parking and no stopping signs. Blocking a fire route when you're dropping off or picking up your children is dangerous, even if it's just for a few seconds. In an emergency, these few seconds can make all the difference to first responders. And finally, watch for the crossing guards that are helping students cross the street. A crossing guard's stop sign has the same legal authority as a stop sign at the intersection. Stop when the guard has their stop sign in an upright position. You must remain stopped until the children and guard have safely cleared the entire roadway, not just your lane. Not obeying this law could mean 3 demerit points on your driver's record, increased insurance, and a fine up to $500. More importantly, it could mean seriously injuring a crossing guard or a child. Please be careful out there. Let's all work together to make this a safe and happy school year.
Good morning. Could you please all rise for the singing of our national anthem, to be followed by a moment of personal reflection.
Silence.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to our regular council meeting of November 23rd, 2016. All members of council are present today. I understand Councillor Pellecci is ill this morning. We wish him speedy recovery. Just want to remind everyone at today's meeting, please ensure all your cell phones and other electronic devices are turned off or placed in a non-audible mode during the meeting. Members of council, there are a few agenda changes identified on the package in front of you. I'm going to ask the city clerk to review the changes for today's agenda since its publication last Thursday. Mr. Fay.
Mayor Jeffrey, members of council, and members of the audience that are here today. The proposed items to be added to today's agenda is 21.3 minutes of closed session from the Planning and Infrastructure Services Committee meeting of November 21st, this past Monday. As well, there are 4 bylaws to be added. Bylaw 259, 2016, to amend Traffic Bylaw 9393, and related schedules in regard to Abitibi Lake Drive and Fern Forest Drive in Ward 9, and Elburn, Markell Drive, and Laurenville Drive in Ward 5. Bylaw 260, 2016, to amend Traffic Bylaw 9393. It's a schedule relating to no parking at various locations in Wards 1, 2, and 5. Bylaw 261, 2016, to amend Traffic Bylaw 9393, and it is administrative updates to schedules related to designated turning lanes and fire routes throughout the city. And Bylaw 262, 2016, to amend Traffic Bylaw 9393, and it relates to schedules related to through highways and stop signs in Ward 9. As well, there is in regard to item 10.5 minutes from the Planning and Infrastructure Services Committee meeting this past Monday. The recommendations only are here for council's consideration. The minutes will be presented to council's meeting on December 14th. Additional business and changes to the published agenda. Item 6.2, a delegation regarding Habitat for Humanity. There is a revised presentation attached and presented to the members of council this morning. In particular, there's a new slide 10 and a revision to slide 11. And finally, in regard to item 18, regional council business, there is a briefing report from the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer regarding the Region Appeal Council and Region Appeal Council budget meetings scheduled for tomorrow, November 24th. Those are the changes.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to add an item to the agenda. It would be 16.1, and it's budget schedule of meetings for next week.
16.1 budget. Okay. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to add an in-camera item of litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose.
So that's 21.4 in our closed agenda. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to add a very brief announcement, if I could, please.
Okay. That will be 5.3. Okay. Moved by Councillor Wellen, seconded by Councillor Moore, that the agenda for the regular council meeting of November 23rd be approved as printed and circulated with the additions and changes. All those in favor? That's carried. Do any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered on today's agenda? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk. We are now ready to move to the next item of public business on today's agenda. This is item 3. These are minutes. We have the following council minutes before us today. Moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Wellens, that the minutes of the regular City Council meeting of November 9th to the Council meeting of November 23rd be approved as printed and circulated. All those in favor? That's carried. Are there any other minutes? Nope, that's it. Okay. And the consent agenda items listed with an asterisk on the agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial. The consent motion is to adopt these matters on today's agenda without the need for a separate discussion on the item unless a member requests a separate discussion. We don't have any items on the agenda for consent. Does any member wish to add to the consent motion? Seeing none, we now move to the agenda dealing with announcements. Today we have 3 announcements. Our first announcement is with regards to the Brampton East Soccer Club. And I believe there's some coaches here. This year, the 2016 National Soccer Championship was held in Moncton, New Brunswick, where Ontario was represented in the boys under 14 division by the newly crowned provincial champions, the Brampton East Blades. And on October 14th, the Brampton East Blades won their final game and were crowned as national champions. So Heidi Othma, head coach, and Janet Othman, manager, are here to speak about this accomplishment. Are they here today? Come on up. Come on up to the podium. Right here, to the podium, right in the middle. Right here.
Right here.
Right here. Congratulations. And I understand the boys aren't here because they're in school.
Yes, you are correct. We didn't want to take them out of school, but they are very excited. They know about this event, and we also have a celebration planned for them this Friday. And I believe you have certificates to
I do.
hand them, and they're very, very excited to have you there. They've worked really hard. We've had them since they were young. They are now 14 years old. They won the Ontario Cup last year, and they went ahead to defend that title. But this year, they also went to the Nationals, and they were crowned champions. So we are hoping for some support. I know the club are doing their part, but we're hoping for some financial support from various parties because they are working hard, and it's keeping them from doing all kinds of things that we don't want our youth to be doing. We encourage them to study very hard and also play well, stay with all the teams and the competitions that we provide them with. So at the end of the day, we want your support, hopefully, to encourage not only them but all the youth to continue in this really healthy environment as far as their future. Going forward, they're going to be sticking to the game. Just by talking with them, they are enjoying every minute of it. They look forward to the practices, the games, and all the competitions, and that's what we're hoping for.
Terrific. Councillor Medeiros, you had something?
I thank you through the chair. I just want to, as a former soccer player myself, I played for Chinguacousy and I played for Brampton all my life. I only reached the Ontario Cup semifinals, but just to let council know, the achievement that this team has made is just really tremendous. Just to win an Ontario Cup final is tremendous, and on top to win the Canadian Cup is just fantastic. So congratulations, and I'm not sure if you had the opportunity regarding the financial support. I believe our Director of Parks and Rec, because I believe they are a registered club, I'm sure they'll be able to help you with what opportunities, grant programs that we have through the city. But thank you again for representing Brampton, and congratulations. And where's the party happening on Friday?
Well, it's going to be at Terry Miller Recreation Center. That's on Williams Parkway. It's a recreation center.
Fantastic.
So we'll have that at 7 o'clock this coming Friday. And we're hoping to see a few of you, the mayor, and hopefully some more. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate your support in whatever form it comes. Thank you.
Councillor Spovieri.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much for coming this morning. It's Hody, is it?
I'm sorry?
Your name is Hody?
My name is Hedy Othman.
Oh, Hedy. Hedy, okay. Well, anyway, it's so great, what a great news, and what I'm really impressed with is, first of all, you must be a great coach, because I know I coached soccer in my young days when my kids were growing up, and I know how difficult it is to win, never mind league championships, but to win national championships. It's a great achievement, so you must really be an outstanding coach to achieve that. The other thing I'm really impressed with is that the team is a reflection of Brampton. It's great to see a mix of players from the different ethnic groups, and they're all playing all together as a unit. And, it's a great achievement to get these kids to make this great achievement. So you need to really be recognized for your great achievement and to bring in the various ethnic kids together to make them play together and to achieve this great achievement. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
So thank you very much for making Brampton proud. Clearly, we know some of the best athletes come from Brampton, from across Canada. You've made us very proud. You've raised the Brampton flag in a very special way, and these certificates, I can give them to you today, but certainly I'm hoping to be there Friday. So we'll make sure you get them early.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
Can I give this to the clerk?
Yeah, I would love for you to hand them to the boys because they are looking forward to
It's my
that.
intention to be there, so
Thank you very much.
thank you for doing all that you do. A lot of hard work, not only by you, but by the parents. And
Yes.
we appreciate you doing an amazing feat, really. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Okay, our next announcement is with regards to the city's holiday planner 2016-2017. And Councillor Dillon is the council sponsor. Did you want to speak to this now or after?
Speak to that.
Okay. Cheyenne Harvey Stolbny and Julie Valente, Recreation, Culture, Community Services, are here to make the announcement. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Mayor and members of the council. We are so excited to be here this morning to announce all the exciting and fun festive events and programs that will be offered at various recreation centers across the city this holiday season. Last year, we had nearly 60,000 residents participate in programs and events throughout the month of December. And this year, we have everything from holiday-themed camps and programs to cookie making and gingerbread house building, and even a very special breakfast with the big man himself for young and old to enjoy. And once again, we are thrilled to announce that we have Tim Hortons back on board as a sponsor of the free holiday skates. So there will be over 39 free holiday skates offered at various centers across the city, and they begin on December 23rd and run straight through until January 8th. So that will cover that extra week that the kids are off this year. In your packages, we have included the Recreation Holiday Planner, as well as a merry calendar of events that reflect all of the recreation events, camps, skates, and activities that are scheduled throughout the month of December. And for more details, of course, we invite the public to visit Brampton.ca, to call 311, or even better, drop into your neighborhood center and have a chat with a staff member. We are very excited and cannot wait to celebrate with Brampton families this year, and we hope that everyone is as excited as we are to kick off this holiday season. And now we have Julia, and she's going to speak about all of the festive fun that we have planned over at our beautiful Chinguacousy Park this year.
Thank you, Cheyenne. I'm very excited to be able to have this opportunity to talk to you today about the exciting holiday events happening in Chinguacousy Park. Christmas in the Park is a series of holiday events happening throughout the month of December. There are 6 dates, and all dates and times are located on the backside of your calendars provided. These events will take place in and around our new skating trail, our gorgeous grounds, and numerous amenities. Participants that are coming out to these events can expect to take part in activities such as amazing holiday lighting displays, crafts, and games. Lots of lighting has been added this year to the park in the skating trail, formal gardens area, pavilion, and along Queen Street. There will be interactive visits with Santa Claus. Registered participants will start their hour-long journey to go visit Santa from our pavilion, where they'll do crafts and even write their letter to Santa. They will then take a wagon ride to our greenhouse and chapel area, which will be transformed into Santa's garden. They will get 20 minutes with Santa to hear stories and even a personal message from himself. Santa's reindeer and sleigh will be on display at the park, all 6 dates, for photo opportunities for kids to take part in. School performances and expected visits from fire department, paramedics, and police services. We will also have a local DJ perform on December 16th and 17th. There will be 3 performances of the Nativity Pageant that will take place at the Chinguzi Barn on Saturday, December 17th, put on by a local community church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Participants can also roast marshmallows and eat fun treats. They can hopefully take part in our skating trail, of course, weather and conditions permitting. We will also make sure that they have an awareness of all the other fun winter activities happening at the park. Mount Chinguzi will also be gearing up for their winter season with an expected opening date of December 27th. Of course, weather and conditions permitting. I'm also excited to announce that CTV has been in contact with us and is working on plans to incorporate a live segment of their evening news into our December 16th event. The focus will be on our outdoor skating trail and may be relocated into an indoor space if needed. We will be encouraging everybody to visit the Chinguzi Park page at brampton.ca for event details and any updates. I'd also like to point out the lovely poinsettias in and around council chambers and our tree in the City Hall lobby. I'm proud to inform you that Chinguzi Park grows over 1,700 of these plants annually. They start in July and grow through to November, and they're used for decor around the city of Brampton. They are for sale at Chinguzi Park Ski Chalet and Curling Club during regular office hours. Each plant is affixed with a label that points out to everybody that has one that they're grown locally in the city of Brampton. Again, residents are asked to check brampton.ca for complete listings of the many holiday events happening this December. Is there any questions?
Thank you, ladies. I'm going to go to my council sponsor first, Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I just want to say thanks so much for the great job. I had a chance to look at the schedule here with my family, and so we're already coordinating and organizing a lot of the events we're going to go to, but I think this is a wonderful opportunity for all families across Brampton, whether you're looking into recreation or whether you're looking into the arts and culture component of it as well. And CTV's coming. We're gonna get a chance to really showcase a lot of what we're doing here in Brampton as well. So our residents won't have to leave. We can do everything right here at home, and I think it's a testament to all the hard work that you guys have done. So I really want to say thanks to the whole team. So great job.
Thank you. Councillor Miles.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to start off by thanking you for bringing Christmas back to Chinguzi Park. I don't know, members of council, if you remember last year, about this time of year, I was disappointed that the Christmas Wonderland wasn't happening in Chinguzi Park anymore, and with all of your support, we actually gave direction to our Parks and Recreation staff to bring the Winter Lights program back to Chinguzi Park, and you guys have done a phenomenal job. So I want to say to members of council, when they say reindeers in Chinguzi Park, they mean real reindeers, not a facsimile. So for all of you who have children and grandchildren, this is going to be an amazing event for them, because they can go have all of the anticipation of meeting up with Santa, but also real reindeers. I think it's amazing that you've been able to find real reindeers for Chinguzi Park. That's phenomenal. You have far exceeded my expectations on this. So thank you so very, very much. A number of years ago, when we talked about the Winter Lights program in Chinguzi Park, it was part of the whole Communities in Bloom initiative. And our vision at that time was to create a destination for Chinguzi Park, not only for schools and the residents around the city, but for others in other communities. And I think when you couple what we are offering in Chinguzi Park with the beautiful lighting display and events in downtown Brampton, Brampton is and should be a destination place where people around the GTA mark their calendar to get in the car in the evening and drive to Brampton and experience Christmas in the city of Brampton, because it's pretty phenomenal. So thank you to all of you. We live in an amazing city. We live in a great city, and it's because of the heart that people like your like Mary Howell and the other staff in our Parks and Recreation, the heart that you bring to this community through festivals, events, and getting people involved. So I'm really excited. How do I register my 2 grandchildren to go and do the 1-hour trip with Santa?
Basically everything can be done online or in person at a recreation center. Barcodes are provided on our website, and you basically just register and show up that day, and it'll be an hour-long journey for the kids to participate.
Wonderful. Thank you. Again, I can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
Well, your enthusiasm is infectious. Councillor Gibson.
Here all this time, I thought Santa Claus was the only one that had reindeer. Now we have them in Brampton. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. You've done a tremendous job. Last night we had a public meeting for budget, and one of the things we had heard from some of the people from the public is they didn't know how to find out what was going on in Brampton. And we know we do a lot of things. So for the folks that are hearing it at home right now, they're listening to this and hearing about all these great things, but they can't see what's happening in their area. So can you explain for the folks at home what you're doing with this, where it's going to be, for instance, online and all that kind of, where they can find out what's going on if they live in Northwood Park, want to find out what's going on at Chris Gibson? How would they know that? Where could they find that information out?
Through you, Madam Mayor. These holiday planners are at every recreation center, so this can be found, and I don't know if they're at, or is there any other place we can find these besides the recreation centers? Online schools. Perfect, and they're going out with schools, as well as a lot of the events will be tweeted and Facebooked. Social media is one of the best ways to get the message across these days, so that will be one of the initiatives as well. I believe that is, and the portal website as well, the brampton.ca.
So if they wanted to find out, they could go online, they could find out. I know that I think our assistants have already started to tweet out and put on Facebook the schedule. I believe they have. If they haven't, they certainly will be. I'm sure we all will be doing that and retweeting it a few times so people can find out. But I think it's important that we let people know how they can find out these things, because sometimes they don't know how they can do that. And you can go to any rec center and find out what's going on in your area or online. It's easiest to go online, but some of us represent areas where we have a lot of seniors that don't go online, so they can call the rec center.
Exactly, 311 or visit.
Pick up the phone, call 311, absolutely. And there's all kinds of ways that they can find. But one of the things we learned last night, I think, is we have to start communicating out to people how they can find this information. It's not just good enough to have the information out there, to let them know how they can find the information. So thank you very much. This is fantastic.
Thank you. I have one more speaker, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, and thank you very much for your presentation today. I'm going to make one more suggestion in terms of where people might be able to pick up one of these, and that's our transit terminals. There's a lot of traffic that flows through there. I don't know how you feel about standing at the GO train station and handing them out at 6 o'clock in the morning, but that's also an effective way. But a lot of times people don't think to do it through the day, and then when they get home they're tired, but if they've got something in their hand or can pick up something. So Director of Transit is here. If they're available on those counters, it would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. You got us all stirred up. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.
Okay, our next announcement is Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I don't know how I can compete with that enthusiasm, but it's going to be tough. And thank you for having the reindeers fly in early for us. Thank you. My announcement is just very simply the Brampton Minor Hockey League is having a food drive that's going on at Cardinal Leger this week that both Peel Regional Police and our Brampton Fire Department are involved with. It's called The Gift of Giving Back. It runs tonight, tomorrow, and Friday night at Cardinal Leger from 6 till 9:30. All the boys hockey teams in Brampton have been going out collecting food at various locations. Last year, they were able to raise a little over 78,000 pounds of food that went to 3 local regen, it went to Salvation Army, and it went to the food store here in Brampton. So the kids are doing this all for the city of Brampton, and with any luck this year, we'll crack the 100,000 pound mark for food. So it's just a very, very nice story. So we hope if you can drop by any time and pay them a visit and thank the kids, that would be great. Thanks.
Councillor Miles, is that on this item? Okay.
Just a question through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Bowman. So can members of the public simply drop in and drop off items?
Yes, they can drop off items at Cardinal Leger, or the fire station is also collecting for the gift of giving back, and they've got signs up as well. So yeah, that would be very, very helpful. Thank you.
That's great. So can I tell a little story?
If it's short.
Okay, so last year at Christmas time, my granddaughter is 5. I said to her, we're going to go and we're going to pick a gift for some children in the community who don't have a lot. So it was a wonderful experience. We went to the store. I said, okay, we're going to pick up a gift for a little boy and a little girl, and she picked it. And then we went and we took it, and we went to the fire station, and the firefighters were there, and they greeted us with open arms and talked about the importance of giving back to the community. And she still talks about it. So, it's a wonderful learning experience. So it doesn't just have to be you going and buying something and delivering it. Like, there's opportunities here to, get your kids, get the children involved, and get them thinking about how important it is to give to others at this time of year. So for me, it was a really special moment. I'm always going to remember that. But I think there's a story there to share to the community as well about, setting a good example for our children about giving to others, especially at this time of year. So thank you for your indulgence, Madam Mayor.
No problem. Councillor Williams, do you have a story?
I don't have a story, but I was there last night helping them set up, and again, thank you to the fire department and the police department. They were fantastic. I went there with the intention to help them put the wooden floors down over the gymnasium so they wouldn't damage the floors with the pump trucks. And apparently they had the floor done in 10 minutes before I got there. So they had over 100 volunteers last night. They unload the truck with the big bins. So I encourage the councillors, members of staff, if they can get by. It's incredible to see what these kids do. It brings tears to your eyes. They're out there in the community. They're all over the community right now. And they've anticipated that the gymnasium is going to be too small for this year's event. Cardinal Leger has actually told them next year we'll just move it out into their main cafeteria and use the halls if we have to. So here's a local school right downtown town here that's just opened arms and has done a great job to accommodate this group of individuals. So I encourage you all to get there. It's a fantastic event, and I'm going to be there tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman, for bringing this to our attention. Our next item is delegations. Our first delegation is in response to a public notice given by the city with regards to the notice of intention to amend the mobile licensing bylaw 67/2014 to suspend the requirements for training and the written exam for a taxi cab driver's license. Is there anyone here to speak to council regarding this bylaw amendment? I understand Milton Bangu is here. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, and good morning, all the members of the council. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak this morning to you about the Taxi Advisory Committee recommendation coming out on the last meeting. I want to thank our chair, Mr. Dhillon, for explaining the recommendation to Corporate Service Committee last week, but I think there was a bit of confusion with one of the recommendations on English language. The requirement, this was explained to the committee that I will try to clarify advisory committee position and the taxi industry prospect on every briefly there. Let me start by saying the industry is full support of as council to keep bylaw in the language that drivers must able to communicate in English. There is no debate opposition to that item that issue that we do have, that the City of Brampton also requires drivers to take a test by reading an article by providing answers which in our opinion is above beyond other judiciaries. We would like to point out that not even the City of Toronto has this kind of test. What happened in Toronto, as we spoke to a few of my colleagues, they say the taxi industry itself enters because driver can't communicate the customer, then customer is likely to have good experience, that company is likely to lose business because if he can't speak the English. So as you can see, it is in the company's interest to hire drivers who can communicate the customers, so we believe additional tests are not required. I'm here just to tell you, Madam Mayor, in the City of Toronto, they don't take any English test. We do in Brampton. All of Bramptonians, they are going to drive for City of Toronto.
I have a couple of speakers. Do you mind answering
Yes,
questions?
please.
Councillor Medeiros.
Thank
Do you
you.
have a question of the delegation
Thank
or
you.
staff?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Actually, both. First, the delegation. Thank you very much, Mr. Bengu, and thank you for really clarifying, I guess, the issues with the taxi cab industry. You talked about how difficult it is because a lot of the drivers, local Brampton drivers, go work in Toronto. Can you just elaborate what type of impact that has on your business, I guess, on the industry? If you can just elaborate a little bit more.
To you, Madam Mayor, Councillor, I'm a manager of Brampton Dominic Quick Cab. From last 1.5 years, I don't have a single driver in my office as a new driver. With everybody, last time I have a few drivers came to my office, how are we going to get the taxi license? I simply give the license enforcement officer Chrysler Drive and have the phone number. I call them after 2 weeks and ask them why you didn't take our license. Said we already took the City of Toronto license because they don't have any requirement. They only have 3 requirements: G license, their abstracts, and criminal record. If you provide 3 of them, they don't ask you the 4th question. They just simply give you the tax. It's up to the brokerage if they want to let him drive or not, because at the end of the day, if he can't communicate with the customers, then the customer will call somebody else, not that company.
So through the mayor, I guess then my understanding, it's a very competitive market here in Brampton for taxi cabs.
Yep.
So it's in your interest actually to have the best drivers that you can have, because it essentially reflects the customer service that you want to provide as a company.
That's true, Madam Mayor, because if the driver can't speak English, the brokerage will not allow him to drive for him because he don't want to lose the customers.
Thank you. Now to staff. Thank you, Mr. Bengu. Now to staff. Is that correct regarding, I guess, in Toronto, regarding the English language testing? If you can just confirm. Because the City of Toronto, I would find, being leaders in the industry, as majority of tourism in Canada is in the City of Toronto. So I'm kind of surprised, if you can clarify that.
Through the mayor to the councillor, the City of Toronto does have the requirement in their bylaw to communicate in English. They do not implement a actual language assessment test at the time of application. The City of Brampton does do a language assessment. It's a very short test that measures and looks for a Canadian language benchmark of 5.6 for our drivers, which allows them to communicate properly with the customers. Through
the mayor, so we have this bureaucratic step here at the City of Brampton, and this reminds me a little of the case around the whole immigration debate. I can tell you in the Portuguese community, it's frustrating that you get a lot of good workers who work in trades, yet they can't pass the English test. But if you speak to employers, they're dying to get them here because they work well and they do good work. So if you can explain to me, so we have this step here. How necessary is it? Or would you recommend following the Toronto model?
Doing language assessments, Toronto still has it, and in the most recent taxi news, Toronto is being criticized for the fact that they're not testing for this by industry members. When the English language assessment was implemented in Brampton, it was done after the City of Mississauga had done the same. And when I was in Mississauga at the time doing this, we did it because One was for safety of the driver. His ability to communicate properly and listen and speak to the customer is important, in that there was a study done in Australia where they found that most drivers with English as a second language and didn't have the full ability were more of a target for robberies than drivers that had full English as well. So we've implemented it to ensure that the drivers have a good knowledge of what the rules are under the bylaws through that, and that they have some safety factors for themselves on the road, able to communicate to passengers, explain situations to the passengers as they're doing it, and to just overall provide a proper experience. And it's done through the licensing as opposed to the industry itself.
But, through the mayor, and I guess this is something that you couldn't comment, but if we're having our taxi industry and we have local residents who can't work in their own community and are choosing to work in Toronto, and our businesses are suffering here, I think there's a disconnect somewhere. I don't know if this is one of those areas where there's a process that understanding, sometimes, the spirit of it, but its effect on the industry, and hearing from Mr. Bangu seems to be quite strong, and it's quite a negative impact. I'm not sure at this time, Mayor. I'd like to bring the minutes, specifically the vote on requirements for working knowledge of the English language. I know there's people on the board, so I don't know if it's the city clerk can elaborate when we can I bring the minutes forward to request a revote on CS 157216, which is a requirement for applicants to demonstrate a working knowledge of the English language.
Through you, Mayor Jeffrey, so the matter that's before Council now with the public notice is in regard to recommendation CS 156, 2016, which is on page 10.4-8, which is the bylaw amendment to the mobile licensing bylaw to deal with training and written exam requirements for the taxi license. I think where the level of conversation is going now through the delegation and the council debate is on the lost motion. There was a motion that lost at committee, and that's C157. So if it's the will of council to bring forward those minutes and deal with it now, or to deal with its proper sequence in the agenda later on, that's the will of council. But it is proper if a member wishes to move a motion to bring forward that lost motion for a vote again at this time.
Sure, I'd like to move a motion since we have, and we're discussing it. I'll allow the other members to ask their further questions, but I just think since we're dealing with the issue now, it's all related. So I'd like to move a motion to bring it forward, the minutes of corporate services.
Where will we find the motion, Mr. Clerk? 6?
It's in the corporate services committee minutes. It's page 10.4-8, and we'll put it on the screen.
Page 8 of 15. I'd like to request a recorded vote as well, Clerk.
Okay, I'll go to my next speaker, Councillor Spovieri.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your presentation today. From my understanding, just to clarify an issue, a lot of Brampton residents prefer to drive in Toronto, mainly because it's more business in Toronto than there is in Brampton. That's why a lot of the drivers prefer to go, that's my understanding, rather than go to Toronto than work in Brampton because of the amount of business that's available in Toronto. And I actually know some of my constituents who live in Brampton and work in Toronto. And that's the reason they told me why they go to Toronto. Is that correct? Or
that is also one of the fact too. In Toronto is big city, then Brampton, that I will not deny that. That's also one of the fact too. They go to Toronto.
Now, as far as the English testing, I would imagine that most people who immigrate to Canada have some knowledge of English. I believe that's a requirement, that people have to have some knowledge of English before they're allowed to come into the country. So I would think that most people would have some knowledge of English, and to what extent they have to have a knowledge of English to be a taxi driver. I really question as to why somebody would need some really fluent English in order to be a taxi driver. My experience with taxi drivers is when I take a taxi to the airport, sometimes we find some very sociable drivers that like to talk, and we talk. I usually sit in the front seat with the driver, and but sometimes we find drivers that don't want to talk. Maybe it's too early in the morning, when we usually go at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning when we go south. They're not in a talking mood, so we don't talk. So really, I tell them, take me to the airport, Terminal 3 or Terminal 2, whatever, or 1, and off we go, and there's no need to talk. So I really don't understand why there's such a big emphasis on testing people to see whether they have a working knowledge of English to be a taxi driver. I really don't believe it's really necessary to have a working knowledge of English to be a taxi driver. And I would go as far as saying, let's put it into our bylaw, like Toronto, but not implement it unless absolutely necessary. So let's try it out. Let's put it into our bylaw, not require the testing. And then if problems arise where we have to use the bylaw, it's there. So I'd be willing to go that far and put in our bylaw that it's a requirement, but not implement it like Toronto has done. So I'd like to move a motion to that effect.
I think we're going to be voting on it.
Right, but I believe it. The motion there was just simply not to put that requirement.
I think what you have on the screen is that the bylaw be passed to amend the mobile licensing bylaw as amended to suspend the requirement for applicants to demonstrate a working knowledge of the English language.
Right.
I believe that's what you're asking for.
Right, but it's still, the requirement is still going to be in our bylaw? Is just a clarification?
Are you asking staff that question?
Yes, staff.
Through the mayor to the councillor, we could use the wording that the City of Toronto uses, which is be able to communicate in English, as opposed to having demonstrate a working knowledge of the English language. It is, if that was what the desire is, then we could word it that way.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I think I would like to support that wording, and if it could be a friendly amendment, I can to include that in the motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Got some more speakers. Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with what Councillor Medeiros and Councillor Spilberry say, I think, but I just want to add that the way the industry is going, just the transportation industry, is that the TNCs or the ride sharing, they're beginning to pick up steam. They have picked up steam, and they've taken a lot of the business away from the taxi industry. And I think I do think we should, it should be mandated that they know English, but I don't think we should be in the business of testing per se. I think we should let the free market dictate whether customers want to go to them or not. And I think the brokerages want the best drivers, and it'll be up to them. I think we should leave it at their discretion. I think I wrote my G1 test a while ago, many years ago, but from what I recall, you have to know English to write the test. And so I think the ability to do that shows that you have a working knowledge of English, of understanding English as well. But again, I think we have to allow the industry to be competitive and allow the brokerages to do the testing as well. If everybody from Brampton is going to Toronto, I think it's because it's easier to get the license there, and I think this is one of the components of that they think makes it easier. So if Mr. Bangou had no drivers interested last year. I think that might be the same case for many of the other brokerages as well. So I do support the motion. I think English should be there, but we shouldn't mandate we shouldn't have it that the city is doing the testing.
Councillor Gibson?
I don't have a question for the delegation, but I do have questions for staff. That's okay?
Yep.
I'm having a hard time understanding this because in one sense we're being told that drivers, because of the test, are going to Toronto, but then we're also being told that in Toronto they have to be able to speak English. So to staff, you said that in Toronto the bylaw requires a working knowledge of English. Is that correct?
Through the Mayor, for clarity, it says that be able to communicate in English.
Okay, so it's a working knowledge of English. Nobody's saying they have to be speaking English as well as I speak English, or just a working knowledge of English. So I think this is being a bit blown out of proportion. Can you explain, you kind of said about how easy the test is, but can you explain what the test is to us? How difficult is it? Or not difficult, what would a person have to go through to go through the test?
Through the Mayor, the test consists of a conversation between the tester and the applicant, in that they ask their name, where do they live, basic questions that we're all used to having to answer, and it goes on to the ability to listen to a story provided by the tester, and then the applicant is then asked to answer questions in relation to what he heard. And that their answers to that allows us to provide a very rudimentary assessment of their listening and speaking ability.
So how long does this test take?
Approximately 20 minutes.
Okay, so it's not an onerous type of thing.
Absolutely, and there's no charge for that test as well.
Okay. I think it's a difficult situation, but our job here, my perception of our job here, is public safety. So you said it's public safety for the drivers, but it's also public safety for the people that are in there. And quite frankly, maybe to the gentleman here, if this goes through, I think you're going to drive people more to Uber than before. And we just had delegations here not too long ago that told us that help us stop Uber from taking over. You're destroying the taxi cab industry. So to my colleagues here, I think we've been making a huge mistake here. I think we'd be forcing people, not forcing people, but promoting people just to call Uber and not call an industry. As a person that speaks only English, I think people would be more inclined to go to Uber than to call the taxi cab industry and take a chance that they may have a person that they can't communicate in. And, God forbid something happened in that cab that they needed on a safety issue to communicate, and they couldn't communicate. So I don't see it being as of a hardship to the taxi cab industry for our staff to be able to make sure that the drivers that are getting licensed have to do a fairly simple type of communication to make sure that they have a knowledge so that they can communicate not only with the people that are getting into their cabs, only English-speaking people are getting into cabs, but also if there was an accident, if there was an emergency situation, emergency people that are coming, there's got to be communication there. I don't see it as being a big deal, quite frankly, and I think the industry itself will be doing itself a disfavor by promoting people more to go to Uber if they don't. So that's just my perception of it all, and it's the reason why I think that what we're doing is the right thing. I think Toronto we've heard that the industry itself has kind of re-questioned that thinking. So I just throw that out there as some thought. Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Last Wednesday, there were 3 recommendations that were put before us from the Taxi Cab Advisory Committee. One was the issue of the working knowledge of English. One was a request not to issue any plates this year in recognition of some of the changes in the industry. And the other was the requirement for training, rather than doing it through the municipality, have the industry undertake that. 2 of the 3 passed at committee, and the one that didn't was the working knowledge of English. I chaired the Taxi Cab Advisory Committee for probably 6 years, a long time, including a full year of consultation with the industry and all the various stakeholders. And my experience is that they're not shy about sharing what their concerns are. There was very robust discussion that took place at those meetings. At no point over that 5 or 6 years was the issue of a level of competency or working knowledge of English. It was never once raised as an issue, a concern, a grievance, an idea. There was zero discussion about it, which tells me that I'm not sure that it is much of an issue at all. It's almost, and I recognize, I'm probably the first one to say that there's a lot of changes in the industry with the introduction of Uber and rideshare. But I do share Councillor Gibson's concern that rather than requiring Uber to meet the standard that we're required as a municipality when we license, and that is our goal is the public interest, rather than having them elevate, that we're in fact lowering the standard within our own industry and with our own mandates. So I'm not convinced that it's an issue. I think that there are other things that are having the drivers, motivating drivers to go to Toronto, and I think probably a part of that is, as Councillor Spovieri says, there's more of a demand within there, and certainly Brampton recognized that, or committee recognized that last week by not issuing any more plates after a really robust exercise that we went through as a city to have a plate issuance formula that wasn't just based on population, but was based on a whole host of other issues, whether it was new schools that had come on stream, whether it was the square footage of commercial and retail introduced into the community over the course of that year. So I'm really having a great deal of difficulty. I think that the motion that we passed last week requiring of working knowledge is a reasonable expectation. And I think it's a reasonable expectation on behalf of your clients, the riders and the taxpayers and so on in this community.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Miles.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I do agree with the last 2 speakers. The reason why we actually regulate the industry is to ensure the safety of our public. I know myself, when I get in a taxi cab, I want the driver to be able to talk to me in English, because depending upon circumstances, where you're going, timing, etc., you're giving instructions to the driver. And if the driver can't understand English, then you're severely disadvantaged. So it's an expectation that I think people have when they call a taxi, that they are going to be able to communicate with that person. So I absolutely, I met with representatives from the taxi industry before the meeting. I supported them in not doing the additional, the testing, no more plates, but I draw the line here. I really think that if we take away this, I don't know what's left to regulate, quite frankly. We may as well just let the taxi industry be like Uber, self-regulate, go and do your own thing, and whatever will be, will be. But if we are absolutely making decisions that are in the best interests of the community that we are representing, we have listened to the taxi industry. We have had advisory committees. We have been responsive to the things that you've told us. We've changed our rules and regulations as a result of it. But the one place that council has never compromised on is the safety of our community and ensuring that we have top quality drivers that are working in our city. And I do not agree with the fact that we would not ensure that a driver could have a simple conversation in English. That is that to me, that is not setting the bar too high. That should be a minimum standard. And it's fine for you to say that the industry will regulate the driver, but I'm sorry, that is the job of the municipality. That's why we license taxi drivers. So, you know what? It's not a compromise that I am willing to make. I agree with Councillor Moore. I don't think the fact that you're not getting drivers has anything to do with the fact that they have to take an English test. I think it's all about Uber, and it's all about changes that are happening in the industry. And people can call up Uber, they can ride share, they get a cab for a lot cheaper price.
Councillor Miles, can you speak to just the motion?
Sorry. So, don't agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Does the tow truck industry require English tests?
Under the bylaw, no.
Okay. The bus drivers driving our buses of children, do they require English? I'm talking about the private, not our Brampton Transit, but the bus drivers for children, do they require English testing?
Through the chair, I'm not sure that I can answer that question.
Okay, my understanding. Uber, do we test the Uber drivers? So I think we recognize that Uber right now is a huge issue in Brampton. I don't run the taxi cab industry. It's surprising that some of my colleagues talk like, as you know, the bread and butter comes from the taxi cab industry. I have an individual here who's an owner who comes to me with the situation. Their industry is swimming right now. They're swimming to survive. Residents in our area can't find jobs. To me, in terms of the standards, it reminds me again, going back to the immigration issue. I remember meeting with the Minister of Immigration of the former government, and we're trying to change immigration. And he's telling me, well, we don't want to below the standards of English. We want people to rise to our standards of English. Well, right now the new government is changing the immigration system, and that's partly why. And this reminds me of this discussion. What we're talking about is an industry that's willing to self-regulate. It's in his interest to have the best quality service he has. He's dealing with competition, which is not regulated, that doesn't have these requirements, and we're basically tying his right hand behind his back saying, go compete. And then we sit here. I remember distinctly here at council, months ago, we had a vote on cameras, and it lost 10-2. I know, myself and Councillor Gibson were the only ones who voted. And we talked about public safety. So to use it now, in this situation, where we're following a city like the City of Toronto, which is the leader of tourism, would you agree that there's more tourism in Canada that goes to the City of Toronto, and we're following their lead to sit here and say no and almost patronize this poor man who's here on behalf of his industry trying to make it competitive? So, I take exception. I think, we have an opportunity here. Give him a helping hand, help the industry in his interest to do that. And, but to sit here and talk about, you don't think that the industry, that's why they're not suffering. Well, he knows best his market. I don't know his business.
So, Councillor Medeiros, speaking to the motion. Any further comments?
No. Is it possible to call the question?
I have two more speakers who have been on the board before. I'm hoping that we're going to have I think we've had a very robust debate, so I'm hoping these are short comments. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess Councillor Medeiros brings up a good question. In our buses, do we require a knowledge of the English language? Since it's a little bit different than tow truck, where the people that we're regulating here are carrying people in their vehicles. Do we require, and I don't know the answer, but I'm going to ask it. Do we require a good knowledge or a working knowledge of the English language in our buses that we run?
Yes, through the chair, yes, we do.
Okay. And sir, I mean, my questions and my comments doesn't, I'm not trying to belittle you at all. Quite frankly, I'm trying to get a handle on what the industry needs, because as Councillor Moore said, I've been on council 25 years, and for 25 years, we've worked fairly well with the industry. We have a special committee just for this industry. We don't have a tow truck committee or committees for other things. The City of Brampton, I believe, has been really working well with the industry to try to help it out. To the fact that we tried to help stop Uber to the best of our ability too. Are you here representing the committee?
No, I'm the member of the committee.
Or yourself?
Yeah. Like right now, I'm the member of the committee, and I'm not representing the committee.
So the committee didn't give you direction to come here?
No, my colleagues, they did. Like we have a big two brokerage, A1 and myself, and they know about it. Okay. He was busy. He was supposed to be over here.
So you're representing yourself?
That's right.
Not the committee. I haven't heard yet what the committee did to pull the whole industry. All I know is that in other things, when we had the changes for the industry, we filled these chambers. And today we have two people.
So you chair, it's passed in tech committee. No English was passed in tech committee last.
At the committee, yes, yeah. But I'm talking about the whole industry itself. The committee can make all the recommendations they want. I haven't heard that. I don't know what they have done to pull the whole industry itself. In a normal circumstances, when we're dealing with taxi cab issues, we have a lot of people here. Today, we don't. So I'm kind of thinking out loud here that the decision we made last week, if it was an issue with the whole industry, we'd have a packed house here today.
If you, through you, Mayor, if you think the people over there can make them change your decision, the next meeting I can bring maybe 50 people there that are going to help you out.
I just think, we're here, our job is to protect the public. And I think from what our staff's perspective was we're protecting the drivers and the public with this, and I think we have to do it. It's as a warning to the industry, I think you're making a huge mistake here asking for this.
But to you, Chair, but the thing is, our business is stolen from Brampton. Right? Uber drivers, they don't even have any license. Still, they're serving the people of Brampton.
I know, and we're trying to help you with that, weren't we?
Yeah, but what we are doing? Where we are? To you, Chair, ma'am, like you just charged 29 people for the last 2 years.
Well, as you know, the City of Brampton can only do what we can for the letter of the law, and this is being appealed all across Canada. This isn't a Brampton issue with Uber. This is a all-Canada issue.
No, the City of Calgary didn't allow any Uber.
I'm not going to allow the debate to go back.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, I shouldn't be debating, but I'm just trying to get a point across, and I don't think we're doing anybody a favor here with this.
Okay.
And relating this to other things like tow truck is a completely different issue. People, tow truck drivers are not the same thing.
Speaking to the motion that's in front of us.
Thank you.
Councillor Miles.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I just want to say that it is our role as members of council to represent the public and to make our opinions known. Councillor Medeiros, I find your comments were offensive because members of council don't happen to believe the same way as you. When I'm in these council chambers, I'm debating on behalf of the residents, and I really don't expect another member of council to make derogatory comments about my views, and that is exactly with you looking at us and actually making comments. I think it was derogatory and offensive to other members of council because we don't share your opinion.
Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To the clerk, can we defer this to another meeting? So.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, that's a proper motion. If it's a deferral is moved, if that's what you're moving, it would be deferred to the December 14th meeting, which is...
The December 14th, that way it'll give them time and we can make more decisions on it because it looks like...
Okay. And a motion of deferral is non-debatable.
No.
Okay. All those in favor of deferral? All those opposed? Is it 5-5? It's failed? It's failed, okay. My next speaker is Councillor Spovieri.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and in defense of my colleague Medeiros, Councillor Medeiros, I didn't find his comments in any way offensive at all, whether I agree or disagree with the motion.
So I appreciate everybody jumping into...
Of course, but now I'll make my comments.
Speaking to the motion...
Right. I will restate my comments earlier. The taxi industry is under a lot of competition, and they're looking for a level playing field in order to compete and survive. The taxi industry is a benefit to the city of Brampton in the sense that they're regulated, they get their permits, they get their licenses, they pay taxes, and they contribute to the system. Whereas the competition doesn't do any of that. Now, we don't require the competition to come in and have English testing. So why would we require the taxi industry to come in and have English testing? If we want to have a level playing field and give the taxi industry a chance to survive and compete, I think that it's our responsibility to help them out, to at least to give them a level playing field. As far as the safety issue, I don't see where safety even comes into the picture. If the driver is respectable and law-abiding and he passes his, and he gets the police checks and all that, to me, that's a safety matter. You don't want to get a driver that's there that has a bad record or has a criminal record or a driving record. You want to get someone there who has no criminal record, he's got a good driving record, and to me, that's safety. As far as being able to have a conversation in English, as I said, that should be an optional thing. A lot of people don't want to talk, some people want to talk. If they want to talk and they find that the driver from this taxi can't talk, then they go, next time they call another taxi driver, another taxi that will be able to provide that kind of service, I guess, talking service, not a driving service.
So Councillor Spovieri, can you wrap?
So I'm going to, I feel very confident that with the provision we're doing, that we're doing the same language as Toronto, the Brampton drivers will be able to, the customers are protected in the sense that if there's a problem, then we can impose the requirement in the bylaw. So I'm moving that we go with the same language as Toronto has. They seem to be doing okay. We don't hear a lot of problems happening in Toronto, so I think we should give it a chance and see if it works out. Give them a chance to work it out. I'm sure that they will do their best to get the best drivers possible, because it's to their interest. It's their survival, and so let the industry govern that. So
Thank you.
I'm supporting the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking to the motion, firstly, I just want to agree with what Councillor Medeiros had said 100%, and I don't think he was out of line. I think he's speaking to the reality of the situation. In terms of the tow trucks, that's the first point of contact for a lot of accident victims. I got in a very minor car accident last October, and the first person there was a tow truck driver. He asked me if I was okay. He was responding to an actual incident, a crisis, you could say. And so we don't regulate their English. In taxi, people just simply take a person from point A to point B, and hopefully nothing can go wrong. But I think we're in a different situation. I know Council's intention is to help the taxi industry, but what I think we're doing now is by not allowing us to not allowing us to give a little bit of give on this issue is that we're actually kind of doing them a disservice, because the situation is different now. When we were speaking or debating on this issue back in February, Uber didn't have insurance. Uber's allowed insurance now, and this has been regulated by the province of Ontario. So, I think they have come to the reality that Uber is going to be here. They're going to have to compete against them. We don't put restrictions on tow truck drivers. We don't put restriction on any other industry as well in terms of their English, unless it's our own service that we provide, for example, bus. Uber essentially regulates itself. It has its own checks, it has its own background checks, and I think what we need to do is allow the taxi industry to do the same. And so, again, I just want to show my support for the motion.
Thank you.
The times are changing. They're allowed insurance now. I think we need to let them be more competitive.
Thank you. So I have 3 more people on the list who have already spoken twice, and unless there is some burning requirement to elaborate and clarification, Councillor Medeiros.
Yeah, more of a point of privilege and just in response to my councillor colleague. I do apologize if you feel that this was offensive to you, but I don't feel it was offensive to speaking in plural on behalf of council. I think at the same time it's offensive to suggest that any decision-making that we would make in support of removing this requirement, such as the City of Toronto has, would be putting public safety into question. If it was such that even the Ministry of Transportation wouldn't issue a driver's license for someone who couldn't communicate in English, if it was such a hazard in public safety. So, for us to go back and forth regarding the offensiveness of, we're talking about an industry, and the focus here is on trying to help the taxi industry in Brampton, where residents work, so we can have them work here in the City of Brampton. That can be a viable industry that feed families. So every taxi driver has families that are adhered to it. But I do take offense by, my conduct in the last 2 years here in council. I've always been in a respectful manner. It's been in a professional manner. So I do find that, calling me out and saying what I was offensive and saying that my council colleagues, many of the council colleagues I hear would not agree with you. So I apologize to you if you took personal offense. And I would like to leave it at that, but I would ask that we focus on what is best for the taxi industry and for our residents.
Thank you. Councillor Miles.
No, thank you very much, and that's exactly what I'm doing, is concentrating on the taxi, what's good for the taxi industry and our residents. If we as a council, as far as I am aware, this council passed a resolution that we would not allow Uber to function in this municipality. But if we as a council are going to accept that Uber is here and that we're going to help the taxi industry balance the playing field, so to speak, as what's said, I think I would like to put a motion on the floor that we ask our staff to go away and come back with a report that allows the taxi industry to self-regulate.
That's not for this.
Okay, then that if
I think that might be something you could bring up as a question later on in the meeting,
if
or
that
bring
is
to
the
another
case,
standing committee.
If this municipality is saying that the Uber is here and Uber is, all they need to do to operate is have insurance, that they are regulating themselves, and we want our taxi industry to be with an even playing field, then I think it's time that the municipality got out of the business of licensing taxi cabs, because that is what I'm hearing. And I will be bringing forward a motion for our staff to come back and report on whether or not that is the direction that we need to be moving.
Thank you.
Based on
Corporate Services
what
or
I'm
the
hearing.
Taxi Cab Advisory Committee would be the right place for that motion. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I was going to say almost the same thing as Councillor Miles. So to the clerk, I think we need to deal with this today. would it be proper procedure to waive the rules of order and ask for this item to be added to the agenda today so we can have that debate now? Could we do that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, if council wished to add a new business item to this meeting, they would have to reopen its approval of the agenda, which is a 2/3 vote, and then vote to add a new item, which would be a 2/3 vote.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I'm going to move that, and the reason I'm going to move that is because I hear what some of my colleagues are saying, and to Councilor Medeiros, I did take some offense because you called us out first, and Councilor Miles is just trying to, I think, defend us, and this is a good debate. It's not, I don't take it personally, it's a good debate. But I do feel, listening to my colleagues about not regulating in this item, then Councilor Miles is right. Then let's not regulate. Let's take it away. We don't need the committee anymore. And because we're forced, and it's not talking to my colleagues forced, we're forced now to deal with the industry as a whole, including Uber in it.
So, Councillor Gibson, can I...
So I'm explaining why I want this opened.
Why you want it opened?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's the reason I want to open this, because we are now being forced to deal with the whole industry, including the Uber things. And if the industry doesn't want us regulating things like English and that, then let's let them regulate themselves on everything.
Okay.
And I would support that if that's what one of the Councilor Miles or the councillors that just said we shouldn't be regulating them. I would support that. Let's leave it, let it go. So my motion is to reopen this question, to have a debate now and make that motion. And we may need to direct staff, as Councillor Miles said, just to bring back a report on the consequences of that. And I think that's all you're asking for, not to make the decision, to take the consequences. But I don't think we can leave this open today. I don't think we can make this decision and then leave the rest of it all just open there. I think we need to give direction to staff to come back. So that's my reasoning for asking for it to be added to the agenda right now.
So before we get there, we'll go to staff. Mr. Bisson?
Through the mayor, perhaps this would help. Staff are okay with what is up in front of council right now, with the one change to the recommendation that the provision that taxi cab drivers are able to communicate in the English language. To say that, to ensure taxi cab drivers might put it into the thing that we would have to do some testing to do that, but by saying that provision that taxi cab drivers are able to communicate in the English language, that gives us the ability to, if there are complaints about drivers, we can take action against those drivers that the complaints are coming into, if that would help.
Okay, so we're amending this motion. Is that your recommendation?
Yes.
Okay. So the mover of this motion, I believe, is Councilor Medeiros. Are you the mover of this motion?
Mm-hmm.
Are you acceptable to that amendment based on staff's advice?
So essentially, we wouldn't have, through the mayor, we wouldn't have the requirement for testing. However, if there was complaints regarding the lack of English or some form of complaints, then there would be a mechanism that the city would go test after the fact. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, yes, that is correct. That would still provide us that ability.
Now, would this be something through the chair? Again, I don't sit on the taxi committee, and nor do I know the industry. I'm not sure if this was something that would satisfy. Is there any way that we can invite a member of the committee to comment on this?
Mr. Bengo, he's agreeable to the change?
Okay.
So you're agreeable to the change recommended by the staff?
That's right.
So I'd request a recorded vote, please.
Okay.
Can we get back to my motion first?
Hold on a minute. Let's just fix this so it's right based on what staff is, so you know what was on the table previously. Can we get this? Okay, so it's fixed now. My order of items is to receive the delegation. All those in favor of receipt of the delegation? Thank you. It's carried. So, Mr. Clerk, is the order to go to the motion, and then Mr.
Through you,
Councillor Gibson.
Mayor Jeffrey, yes, that's my advice to council. We are in the middle of a debate on the motion that's on the screen.
Okay.
Councillor Gibson's proposal to reopen the agenda and add a new business item could be considered after that. But
Okay.
we're in the middle of a debate right now.
So we're on the middle of the motion. We're dealing with this item now, which is CS 157, 2016, from the Corporate Services Committee meeting. It is amended, and a recorded vote has been requested.
Madam Mayor, if I'm still on the board?
Sure. Councillor Gibson.
To the clerk, personally, I think this is contrary to the motion. The original motion that was put forward was to allow testing to happen. This does not. The staff had just said, so it's contrary to what was originally voted on in committee and contrary to the original motion that was put on at the beginning of this. This takes away what we've had the last hour of debate on.
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mayor Jeffrey, in my opinion, it is not contrary. The motion that carried at committee is CS 156 that says, and it did carry, to suspend the requirements for training and the written exam for a taxi cab driver's license to allow the industry an opportunity to attract potential applicants. The motion that this speaks to in front of council today is in regard to suspend the requirement for demonstrating a working knowledge of English language. They were treated as separate motions through the Taxi Cab Advisory Committee. They were treated as separate and distinct motions through the Corporate Services Committee. So in my opinion, it's a proper motion before council today.
Okay. So, Councillor Gibson, you still have the floor.
I don't accept that. We've been debating whether or not we should be having a testing, and this takes away the testing. So my humble opinion is we just wasted a whole hour of conversation here because this takes away it. It's contrary.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Miles.
Well, the motion itself doesn't make any sense. It says that it be amended to suspend the requirement for applicants to demonstrate a working knowledge of the English language, and to include a provision that taxi cab drivers are able to communicate in the English language. Well, it's the two sentences are contrary to what the first part says. We're not asking for a requirement for them to demonstrate a working knowledge, and the second says that we're including a provision that they have to communicate in the English language. It doesn't make any sense.
So we're not going to have debate across the floor.
We just vote on it.
It's crazy.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and perhaps staff can comment as well. In my view, this is a proper motion. It's suspending the requirement that currently exists in the bylaw to demonstrate a working knowledge of the English language, and as has been discussed through this debate, to include a provision similar to the City of Toronto that taxi cab drivers are able to communicate.
James, did you want to jump in at all? Help?
I think it would be better if we just simply use the wording that was, replace it with the wording that is used in the City of Toronto's bylaw, and that would be that he or she shall be able to communicate in English. No, and takes away the testing, takes away the aspect.
That's good.
So the wording would be to suspend the requirement for applicants to demonstrate a working knowledge, to demonstrate they're able to communicate in an English language. Is that just to get rid of all the, how would the wording be? Mr.
So through you, Mayor Jeffrey, then I believe the motion would be that a bylaw be passed to amend Mobile Licensing Bylaw 67-2014 as amended to suspend the requirement for applicants to demonstrate a working knowledge of the English language. That is the exact motion that lost at Corporate Services Committee last week. And as Mr. Bisson is saying, include a provision that he or she should be able to communicate in English, which reflects the wording in the City of Toronto bylaw.
Okay. Does everybody have understanding? Councillor Miles, are you still on the floor?
Well, I still think one contradicts the other.
Okay. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Really what we're doing is replacing the language. We're not suspending anything. So I'm going to suggest that the motion be amended to change that the bylaw be passed to amend the mobile licensing bylaw to replace the language requiring applicants to demonstrate a working knowledge with, and then put in quotations, exactly what it says out of the City of Toronto bylaw, and that taxi drivers shall be able to communicate in English. So the amendment is not to suspend, in my estimation, it's not to suspend the requirement, it's to change the language in the bylaw. So I think that's what the amendment should say. So I don't know whether you got that, Terry, or not, but if you're the one typing it up, but that it be amended to replace the language requiring applicants to demonstrate a working knowledge with shall be required, or shall be able to communicate in English. Well, the language in the City of Toronto says shall be able to communicate in English. If that's what so everybody's got a confused look.
So,
Mr. Fay?
Members of council, through you, Mayor Jeffrey, there is significance in words. Shall and should mean two different things. So my advice will be that I think we should go on. The Corporate Services Committee minutes 10.4 has been brought forward. I recommend that we go ahead and deal with those minutes. In the meantime, I'll work with staff to come up with the proper wording that's just been spoken to here, because I want to make sure that all members of council know what they're voting on.
Well, and I'm fine with that, Mr. Clerk, but Mr. Bizon did read what was out of the City of Toronto. The letter we got from Mr. Bango said, we want you to do in Brampton what they're doing in the City of Toronto. So then we should be consistent so that this doesn't come up again, where we're changing the word shall or should to anything else. That if we're going to be consistent, let's do it once.
Okay, I'm going to take the advice of the clerk and try and go through the minutes of the Corporate Services Committee meeting. Councillor Medeiros, you chaired the Corporate Services Committee meeting, which met on November 16th. The committee minutes are here for council's approval. I now pass the chair to you, lead council, in the consideration of the committee minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of council, you have before you the minutes of Corporate Services Committee. Are there any questions or comments? No. Back to you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Well, aside from the CS 157 2016, I have a motion moved by Councillor Medeiros, seconded by Councillor Spolieri, that the minutes of the Corporate Services Committee meeting of November 16th to the council meeting of November 23rd be received, and the recommendations be approved as outlined in the subject minutes. All those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Maybe we'll go to the rest of our committee reports before we get to the rest of our agenda. Councillor Moore. I know, but I'm trying to get through some of the business of the meeting until Mr. Fay is ready. Are you ready, Mr.? Okay, maybe we'll listen.
So through you, Mayor Jeffrey, to members of council, the proposed motion from Councillor Medeiros, seconded by Councillor Fortini, would be that a bylaw be passed to amend mobile licensing bylaw 67/2014 to include a provision that he or she, referencing a taxi cab driver, shall be able to communicate in English.
Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one question with that. Who decides whether that provision stands, whether they shall speak English, if that motion passes?
Mr. Bissett?
That would be the license issuer's responsibility, which is myself.
So we're basically back to the same thing as we had. We're basically back to a conversation between you and the applicant to see if you agree he has a working knowledge of English.
Yes, but what it does do is it allows that there's no requirement for us to have them demonstrate that working knowledge of the English language through a test.
Okay, so I'm just, my understanding the test that would be administered, according to you, when you were speaking earlier, was just a few simple questions, name, address, correct, and a very brief conversation. Is that correct?
That is correct, that we do right now.
Okay, so when an applicant comes to you to take an application, do you ask those questions, name, address, anyways?
We have the applicants fill out an application form.
Okay, so, but at no time is it verbal?
There is verbal conversation at the counter. They do have the ability to use the city's English language line if they're not able to communicate with us at that point.
Okay, so if they're not able to communicate with you at that point, does that dissuade them from getting their license under this new bylaw?
It could.
Okay, I'm confused and maybe a little disturbed about the whole thing. I mean, what we're trying to do here is ensure that some English is spoken. No matter what way we do it, we are either talking to the applicant or we are testing the applicant or someone is deciding on behalf of the city based on their conversation with the applicant that they have a working knowledge of English. So to me, this portion of the bylaw, no matter what way we want to say it, no matter what way we're going to test it, no matter what way we're going to grade it, says this person needs to speak English in some capacity. Is that incorrect?
That is correct.
Well, to me, that does not change the original motion, and whether it's a test or whether it's a conversation, someone is still deciding, someone is still making a decision about the ability of the applicant to speak English. Someone's deciding that. So no matter what way we change this bylaw, I don't see it as being anything different from the original bylaw. Someone's still making that call. Whether it's a written test, a verbal test, or a conversation, someone's still making that call whether the person can speak English. So, I mean, whether we change the words in this or not, I think the intention is exactly the same as what we talked about at committee. So, thank you.
Councillor Gibson.
Yeah, I suppose now we're talking about a new motion, so we've reopened everything. Councillor Bowman is absolutely correct. This doesn't change anything. Still means there's going to be a test. Still means maybe a bit different. It still means the staff are going to have to determine whether a person can communicate in English. So, I'm happy to support this because there's still going to be a test.
Okay, Councillor Spoliari. Oh, you're off. Councillor Moore.
You passed. I don't believe you. I think you're going back on the board. My only question...
Start the card. Just start the card. Go.
If it's a new motion, maybe we can call the question, but I didn't do that. My question is this. What is the dispute mechanism today? If somebody does the test, somebody's making a judgment. Is there a dispute mechanism? And do you see that continuing, or what language do you need, or policy or provisions so that there is a dispute mechanism? Because as soon as you say shall, and Councillor Bowman is absolutely correct, somebody's going to make the judgment. And somebody's going to perhaps disagree with that judgment. How do we resolve it today?
Through the mayor, the process right now is if an applicant doing the English language test fails, they are not able to, we have a secondary test to have them tested with, but they would have to take 1 month break in between doing so. The other option for the applicants is that if they have an English language assessment that was done by a professional group and shows that they have the Center for Language benchmark of 5 or 6 for listening and speaking, we will accept that as proof of that and allow them to process through.
Okay. Yeah, you know, with the accessibility training and everything that we go, you have to be able to communicate in English. It's, you know, we require them to go through sensitivity training, defensive driving, training for accessibility. Okay. So many questions, too few answers, I guess, but we're trying to reach a compromise here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. James, I just want to kind of like, not get too in depth, but kind of dissect what, assuming this passes, what it was and what it is. So I guess the difference is that assuming this passes, there was a test. In that test, if I came to you, you know, I'm born and raised Canada, English is my first language, you were under the assumption you take no, well, you don't look at me and look at me whether I speak English or not. You're going to test me regardless, even though I speak fluent English with you. That's what it was before. You're not assuming anything. And so we would have done the test to either pass or fail. And so I know as an applicant and you know as a licensor that we are doing a test. So there was a test there. If this passes and I come to you for a license, we both, I guess, assume that I speak English. And the bylaw states that, you know, that the applicant shall speak English. So we're both under the assumption now that I do speak English because it's up to the brokerage to make sure that the person speaks English, that the person speaks English. So you can use your discretion now to see if I actually do have a working knowledge of English. Is that, and so from this point, I'm not under the assumption that you are testing me, but you can use your discretion to either give me the license or not. Is that correct? What I'm saying?
Yes, that is correct. I mean, right now, you're correct that every applicant for a taxi cab driver's license, no matter their background, is required to do the English language test. That makes it fair and equitable. Moving forward, what this allows us to do is, if they're able to communicate at the counter, that would be sufficient. We're not testing them on any level. We're not looking at what level they're meeting. We're just simply, if they're able to communicate with the staff at the counter, they should be able to communicate on the road. We will not be testing them at that point. Should an individual come to us that is having difficulties with the application process, we can still counsel them, which is what we've always done, and talk to them, test them, explain to them where they sit in that matter, and suggest that it might be in their best interest to look at obtaining better English language training.
Right. So hypothetically, if this does pass, English was a requirement in the previous bylaw. It is a requirement now. Simply, we're getting rid of the testing. That's pretty much what it is.
We're really getting rid of the ability to demonstrate a working knowledge of the English language.
So in the formal test per se is removed, but the actual requirement has always been there and will be there for English.
That is correct.
Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Miles.
So if someone comes to the counter to apply for a license and you ask them a couple of questions and they can't answer those questions, what happens?
Through the mayor, at that point we would probably have a discussion with them about the requirement to have the English, being able to communicate in English, and that they may want to hone their skills in that area.
So you wouldn't issue the license?
We shouldn't have to, no.
So it's not up to the brokerage to determine whether or not a person coming in to get a license has a working knowledge of the English language. It's still up to us, the municipality, and you as the licensor, to determine whether or not a person has a working knowledge of the English language?
That's correct. We will no longer be testing for their ability to be at the benchmark 5 and 6 of the Canadian language benchmarks anymore. That's the main part of that is going to be the difference, is we won't be testing to that level of assessment anymore.
Will you be diligent in ensuring that individuals do have a working knowledge of the English language?
Yes.
I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's a test or there's having a conversation about a license. Will you be ensuring still as that people can answer questions if someone's in a cab and there's an emergency and they need to go to the hospital, that the cab driver will understand the directions that there's an emergency, take me to the hospital?
Yes.
Thank you.
I so appreciate brevity. Thank you so much. Okay, Council, we're at the point where we're voting on this motion that is in front of you. A recorded vote has been requested. Mr. Clerk?
All in favor of the motion as presented on the screen, please stand to be counted. Showing in favor is Councillor Gibson, Councillor Fortini, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Medeiros, Mayor Jeffrey, Councillor Dillon, Councillor Scrovieri, Councillor Willens, Councillor Moore. All opposed, please stand to be counted. Showing opposed is Councillor Miles. Madam Mayor, that motion carries 9-1 with one absence.
Thank you. Okay, we're at the next point of the agenda. Mr. Gibson, Councillor Gibson, you indicated you wanted to reopen the agenda to add an item on the taxi issue. Is that okay?
More conversation. So.
Okay. So a 2/3 vote to open the issue. All those in favor? To reopen the agenda, to put an item on that Councillor Miles spoke about with regards to referring this issue to staff. Right? Have I got that right? Okay. All those in favor of reopening the agenda? Okay, all those opposed? That's carried. Okay. So it's being added as item number 10.
It would be item 16.2, so I'm presuming that motion, that 2/3 vote, is to reopen and to add the new business item, which would be a discussion item on the future of the taxi cab industry. 16.2.
Yeah. So at that point, Councillor Miles, you'll have something ready for us on the agenda, right? Nodding? Yes, good. Okay. Our next item, thank you, Mr. Bingo. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Our next item is Delegation 6.2, a delegation from Thomas Fisher, Vice President of Regional Development, Habitat for Humanity, GTA, regarding recommendation CS138, 2016, regarding Habitat for Humanity, a request for relief of fees and charges associated with the development of 13 townhouses at 59 McLaughlin Road North, Ward 1. This is item 8.1 on today's agenda. After hearing the delegation, we can bring forward the staff report 8.1 for consideration, if that's okay with council. Welcome. You have 5 minutes, and we appreciate your patience.
Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you so much for allowing me to present to you today. It's always a privilege, and I appreciate our partnership as we proceed together in accomplishing our mission. Our mission, I'm going to try to work with technology here. Our mission is we mobilize volunteers and community partners to help low-income families break the cycle of poverty through affordable home ownership. And on the screen you'll see, as I look at how we're mobilizing volunteers from our 2015 annual report, you'll see that for every one staff member, 68 volunteers work with us. Over 8,000 volunteers in 2015 have been working with us to help us accomplish our mission. And this year we're set to exceed that. And the reason I'm sharing some of that is having the privilege of maybe talking to some folks at home. I wanted to give Habitat a little bit of a Habitat 101 on who Habitat for Humanity is. And so Habitat for Humanity builds homes to provide home ownership to qualified families whose income is too low to qualify for a conventional mortgage. We provide a hand up, not a handout. We do not give away homes, but we sell these homes to qualified families at fair market value. Home ownership as a means of breaking the cycle of poverty is key. And so home ownership allows for families to accumulate equity. A partnership model is one of our key strengths, where we work with partners to, like City of Brampton, Region Appeal, contractors, trades, to help build these homes. And a social enterprise. A lot of folks ask, where does my money go? Does it go to home building? And through the work of our restores and through the stores that we operate, our stores help us take care of our administrative costs, so all your dollars go directly to building homes, working with volunteers, and helping our families. And so how do we do all this work? Firstly, we remove barriers of home ownership for families through allowing them to provide 500 hours of sweat equity instead of a cash down payment, to providing a zero-interest 20-year mortgage, to making sure that their mortgage payments are adjusted to 30% of their household income and reviewing them annually. Secondly, we lower the cost of building homes through volunteer labor, donations of cash and building materials and services, proceeds from our restore, which take care of almost all of our administrative and fundraising overhead, and mortgage payments from our existing Habitat homeowners. Those dollars come right back to our building fund and allow us to build more homes. And we always say the more homes we build, the more homes we can build. The reality of our partnership to date is 8600 Torbram Road. We have a number of projects preceding this one, but this is, I would say, a dream that we've been working on for quite some time. It's an 18-house project on Torbram Road, just south of Clark. And this is the artist's renditions before we started to build. But today it's a reality. 13 homes have been completed on that project to date. 13 families have moved in, and the project's now a community. And so it's you that have contributed to this ownership model. The 18 families have been helped. 6 of them are single-family moms, and 51 children under the age of 21 are in those homes. A true community. Your continued contribution or commitment to support this means that 13 more townhouses on McLaughlin Road, just south of Christkiton Rec Center, will be built. And so the artist rendition from the front of McLaughlin look like that on the screen, and the overhead, if you look from an aerial view, it's 4 blocks of homes for 13 families. And so, I asked, how can you help? And I asked this of council, I asked this of the community. Firstly, we ask for council to approve grant in lieu of development charges and waiver of all fees for McLaughlin Road project. To the community of Brampton, help us identify families in need that could benefit from the Habitat Home Ownership Program. Land is a key ingredient to our success in helping families. So please consider us when suitable land for Habitat homes becomes available. And thirdly, we ask you to experience Habitat. On November the 29th, and I know council will be busy, but the community at large, we invite you to Torbram Road dedication. It's a time on November 29th when families come together, when our volunteers come together, when those who have helped us in the trades, when staff come together, counselors, we all celebrate the achievement of accomplishing building these homes and moving these families in. And we actually give the key to the family. And so, there are so many different examples of stories from family. The one on the screen basically says, our first night in the house was full of emotions. My children were so excited to look at their rooms, and I cannot explain the happiness I saw on their faces. Thank you so much for your partnership, and because of you and the community, our dreams become a reality, and so do the big dreams for our families. Questions?
Thank you very much and for your presentation. It's excellent. Councillor Gibson.
Mr. Willens is in the chair. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I'm wondering if staff can put up the motion that was in the report. Councillor Moore and I are moving the motion. I just want to thank Habitat for what they do. The first home from Habitat for Humanity in Brampton was in the area that Councillor Moore and I represent, and we were the first councillors, I guess, to work with you to get that home put up, and it was a very smooth transaction, you know, with us and with the community around. There's always concerns about a home when they're built. And in that case, you did a very good job in alleviating the concerns of the community around. And in this case, McLaughlin Road, you've done the same thing for the most part. There's all, you know, we can't satisfy everybody, but I want to thank you for working with us and working with some of the people that had some concerns and addressing them. The architectural design is very nice, what you've done in there, and I want to thank you for that. You continue to provide homes for people who wouldn't get into homes if you did not. So that's, you know, that's the reason why I think we at the City of Brampton and the Region of Peel try to help you out as much as you can to do that. Without the help, you couldn't obviously do what you do. Unfortunately, we are in budget on the 29th, and as much as I'm going to try to get everybody, because I'm chair of budget, through it, the 29th we do have the two outside groups coming in the morning, and we'll likely be there most of the day, so we won't, council members won't be able to make it, but hopefully maybe on the McLaughlin Road one we can work to get a time that maybe all the council members in the mayor can show up and help you with that one. So I just want to thank you, and Councillor Moore and myself have moved the motion that's on the screen to help out, and this is what we've done in all the other instances when Habitat is built in Brampton. Thank you.
Councillor Mons, I'm on the board, but you can go ahead first, because I'm over there now. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thomas, thank you very much for being here with us today. For members of council, yesterday was National Housing Day, and there was a forum at the Region of Peel, and Mr. Fisher was in attendance, as were about 100 other people from all different support agencies, the City of Brampton, and community groups. And the reason that they were there was to ensure that we continue to have a culture of caring and providing, and understanding that having housing is a human right, the same way as food and shelter. So one of the reasons I think that Brampton, and I had the conversation with Thomas before he submitted to become part of a regional Habitat for Humanity, because the Region of Peel has been very successful at creating the opportunities for housing, probably a lot more successful than some of the other areas in the GTA. And the reason for that is the strong partnership that Habitat has had with the City of Brampton and the Region of Peel. We have always supported the work that they have done, and we have also recognized the good work that they have done by waiving fees and enabling these opportunities for housing to be created for those in our community who are less fortunate. So I'm absolutely going to support the motion. I think I think we're a caring community, and we have to continue to be a caring community and continue to give back to those in ways that we can. This is one way that we can, and we need to continue to doing that. So thanks.
Can I ask if any of the people on the list have a question of Mr. Fisher? Otherwise, he can sit down. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, just for staff. Thank you. Can we move receipt of Mr. Fisher's delegation? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Willens.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I guess this question is for staff. I read through the report, and I'm in favor of the motion. You guys, sorry, Mr. Fish, but they do a lot of work in the community, and we were fortunate enough to help them with the last build. But I guess the question is if the person that they've helped out has now bettered himself, he wants to move up, or the family wants to move up, and they're selling that house, the assessed value of that house is, say it's over another 15 years. That's changed. What happens to that, the assessment? Because we've waived, does it come back to the Habitat for Humanity for programs down there? Is there something, like, is there Is there, I guess what I'm trying to say, is there a portion that's held back when they sell the house? I guess I could have asked that question to you, thanks.
Mr. Fisher, are you going to answer the question?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, I'd like to answer that question.
Okay.
So it's a great question, and thanks for asking it, Councillor Williams. So Habitat has in their mortgage model sharing of equity, and we provide a 20-year mortgage for their families. And at the end of 20 years, we expect the family to have enough equity in the home to go conventional. But at that time, there's an equity sharing that, and those dollars come back to Habitat, just as all the dollars that go into the home, donated, gift in kind, trades, they all get turned into cash. That cash comes right back to Habitat, and we built another home with it. Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Dillon?
Thank you. I do support the work Habitat for Humanity does. I've had an opportunity to read up a lot about them, the great work that they do. This question for staff. If the request didn't come directly to council, would the organization have had to go to perhaps the grant program for this request? Like, where would they go otherwise if it wasn't directly to council?
Through the chair to councillor, the only way to give effect to what's set out in the resolution today is to seek council approval to waive this. So there was really no other remedy that's available.
Right.
My understanding is this is essentially a practice that you've used in the past for other applications.
Right.
It's certainly used in many other municipalities as well. So what you're doing is not uncommon. Whether you take it from one pocket versus another pocket really is not that material. What's being presented to you, again, is the norm. It's what you've done in the past,
Right.
and it's what every other municipality's done as well.
Right.
I'm aware of.
Yeah, no, thank you for the clarification. The reason why I did ask is because if, there's particular groups that also ask for requests, and I wanted to make sure that, like you mentioned, that it is the norm that we have done this before. Thank you.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to echo Councillor Gibson's, your first project was in Ward 5. Welcome back. It's, we're really proud to have the Habitat projects in our area. We represent, Councillor Gibson and I, the downtown, which has a lot of the infrastructure already in place. I know the journey to acquiring this land was a long journey. And for those people in our community who think that a Habitat for Humanity project is somehow inferior, and it's interesting what people's perceptions are. With the Urban Design Awards recently, on your project in the H section of Bramalea, I think you got 3 awards. One was a Sustainability Award. I can't remember the other one, but the most important one was the People's Choice Awards, and for all of the projects that were nominated. So this is my opportunity to sort of tell those people who are maybe watching council today to be aware of the fact that you've done some really quite top-drawer projects here in the city of Brampton, and thank you for making a difference. This does make a huge difference. When Councillor Gibson and I were there for the very first family, when they took the keys to their home, it was very heartwarming. It really was. I don't think there was really a dry eye as the key was handed over. It made such a huge difference to that family. So thank you.
Okay. I have no more speakers on the list. Have we gone through, have we brought forward report 8.1? Okay. Yep. Any questions to the report on any objection to bringing forward report 8.1? No? All those in favor? Any questions on report 8.1? Seeing none, we have that one. So we have a motion, which is the recommendation, which is in 8.1. This is a little different than is in 8.1. This is a staff recommendation, which is on the screen. It's moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Moore. All those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you for being here. Our next item is committee reports. We're at item 10. We have 4 remaining sets of minutes today. Under Council's meeting procedures, the committee chair introduces their committee report or minutes, summarizes the matters considered that are now being brought forward to Council today for ratification. Councillor Moore, you chaired Planning and Infrastructure Services Committee meeting and Public Services Committee, which met on November 7th. The committee recommendations are here only for Council receipt, as the recommendations were approved by Council at its November 9th meeting. I now pass the chair to you to lead Council in consideration of the committee minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And with your indulgence, perhaps we could bring forward 10.5. They're both planning.
Sure.
The one is, as you say, they're just minutes for receipt because we've already dealt with the recommendations. On 10.5, it was the meeting that took place just 2 days ago. There were a number of items on the agenda. One was the development of the age-friendly Brampton Strategy and Advisory Committee, and we will, during the regular appointments to committees, we'll be appointing 2 members of council to that. We had a demolition permit on Mississauga Road. We dealt with some all-waste stop reviews in the city. We had quite a long discussion about the purchasing procurement for winter maintenance service over the next 7 years in the city of Brampton, and a number of other routine items. Of particular note, we had a presentation from Metrolinx, who brought us up to date on some of their initiatives and spoke specifically about some of their property acquisitions in downtown Brampton, and they were quite receptive to the comments and suggestions made by members of council, and indicated a strong willingness to work with us into the future. So I see no questions on the board, Madam Mayor. I'll turn it back to you for ratification.
Of 10.1 and 10.5, both?
Yes.
Okay. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Moore, second by Councillor Bowman, that the minutes of the Planning and Infrastructure Services Committee meeting November 7th to Council meeting of November 23rd be received. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And moved by Councillor Moore, second by Councillor Spovieri, that the summary of recommendations from Planning and Infrastructure Services Committee meeting of November 21st to the Council meeting of November 23rd be received, and the recommendations be approved as outlined in the summary, as in the subject summary. All those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Councillor Gibson, you chaired Community and Public Services Committee, which met on November 16th. The committee minutes are here for Council's approval. I now pass the chair to you to lead Council in consideration of the committee minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You have the minutes of the November 16th Community and Public Services Committee in front of you. At that meeting, we had a delegation from Henry Verschuren from the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 15 on the Brampton Veterans Transit Pass. We also had a delegation from Arnold Schwitzberg, a founder and producer of Jazz on the Mountain Festivals, who would like to bring a festival to Brampton. We referred that back to staff for a report. We also had a delegation on the Riverstone Clubhouse, and we referred that back to staff, who will report back. Our staff presentations, we had Elaine Norman, manager of Brampton Emergency Management on the Lighthouse program. We also had Suzanne Connor, the general manager of Transit, on the Affordable Transportation Pilot Project with a region appeal. Also, Vicki Wong, acting senior manager of Realty Services, on the quarterly report of real estate transactions executed by delegated authority. Councillor Miles, on other municipal business, brought up the medical marijuana grow, use and provisions regulated by Health Canada and implementations by the municipality, and staff will report back on that. And we also had Councillor Medeiros inquired about the timelines of the arts panel, and staff responded that they would bring back a report in the first quarter of 2017. Are there any questions or comments on anything on the agenda? Seeing none, Madam Mayor, I'll pass them back to you for ratification.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Dillon, that the minutes of Community and Public Services Committee meeting of November 16th to the Council meeting of November 23rd be received, and the recommendations be approved as outlined in the subject minutes. All in favor? That's carried. Councillor Bowman, you chaired Economic Development Committee, which met on November 16th. The committee minutes are here for Council's approval. I now pass the chair to you to lead Council in consideration of those committee minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Council, you have before you the minutes of the Economic Development Committee meeting of November the 16th. It was a meeting that was short in topics, but very, very great in substance. We had a delegation from Mr. Lee Smout for the health sector trade mission to the United Arab Emirates. He let us know what's going to be going on there, and whether Madam Mayor will be deciding whether she's going on that trip at a later date. We then moved on to a presentation by Mr. Bob Sagan, Advisor, Economic Development, on the Brampton University Initiative, the update and the next steps, and with Mr. Sagan, Michelle McCollum also presented on the timelines as well as the next steps involved. We did have two delegations based on that presentation, one from Mr. Jagvinder Sodhi and the other one from Mr. Dave Capel on behalf of the new Brampton Task Force. And we had a great deal of interaction about what the next steps are and the great news about the university. So, any questions? Seeing none, Madam Mayor, I pass it back to you for ratification.
Thank you, Councillor. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bowman, seconded by Councillor Willens, that the minutes of the Economic Development Committee of November 16th to the Council meeting of November 23rd be received and the recommendations be approved as outlined in the subject minutes. All in favor? All opposed? That's carried. Council, we're at other business. 16.1 is Councillor Gibson. This is the item you placed on the agenda, the Budget Committee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If the clerk can put that motion up on the floor. A pre-agenda meeting for budget, myself and staff felt that we didn't need everything that we had originally at the beginning of the year scheduled for budget. So I sent everybody an email in that effect, and we made some recommendations. First, before we vote on this, I want to thank the staff for all the time they've put into the budget in the last 8, 9, 10 months. I want to thank Council for all the meetings that you've attended with staff to get to a point where next week we'll be starting our budget process. You know, in the past we've been 4 or 5 days doing budget, and it's like a learning curve at the beginning. This year, it's kind of been a little bit of a lot of a change in the fact that staff have always worked on a budget all year long, but Council really hadn't. And this year that changed a lot, and I want to thank all the Council members for making the time to work on this. And you know, we've had a lot of meetings, and staff have taken everything into consideration that Council has said, and you'll see the results of that next week. I'm hoping it's going to go very smoothly. So we've brought forward the recommendation here for the amendments to the budget process for next week's. If we need to, we'll be meeting on Wednesday and Thursday. We only have had one delegation that wished to delegate on the public, so Monday night will be used for that, and anybody that shows up, I will allow to come up and speak, obviously. So it's a more streamlined type of schedule for next week.
See no other further speakers. I have a motion moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Medeiros, which appears on your screen, which is with regards to the 2017 Budget Committee schedule. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's carried. Councillor Miles, 16.2. You have a motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Simple motion that staff report back on the feasibility of the taxi industry being self-regulating, taking into consideration the operation of Uber as a growing alternative.
So that's being referred to staff?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All those in favor? All opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Our next item is Regional Council business. Tomorrow there's a scheduled Regional Council meeting. Staff have prepared a briefing note which has been distributed to members. Do any members have questions of staff on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor of receiving the briefing notes, I have a motion moved by Councillor Gibson, second by Councillor Moore. All those in favor? That's carried. We can now deal with item 19. This is public question period. This is where we invite members of the public to come forward to the podium and ask any questions about any decision made by council at today's meeting. There's a 15-minute limit for all questions and answers. Are there any questions from the public about a decision made by council at today's meeting? Seeing none, we'll now move on to the portion of the meeting dealing with the adoption of the city's bylaws to give effect to the council decisions made at this meeting and previous meetings. I have a motion moved by Councillor Willens, seconded by Councillor Spolieri, that bylaws 249, 2016 to 262, 2016 before council at its meeting November 23rd be given the required number of readings taken by the mayor and the city clerk and the corporate seal affixed thereto. All those in favor? That's carried. The next item of business is item 21. This is the closed business. I have a motion moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Bowman, that council proceed into closed session to discuss matters pertaining to the following. 21.1, minutes, closed session, City Council, November 9th, 2016. 21.2, minutes, closed session, Community and Public Services Committee of November 16th, 2016. 21.3, minutes, closed session, Planning and Infrastructure Services Committee, November 21st, 2016, and 21.4, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, litigation matter. All those in favor? Could I get everybody, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. This meeting is now recessed in order for council to consider its closed session business. Are we going to the 6th floor? We're not. Yeah, because it still says in here. All meetings of council must start and end in public session. After closed session is completed, council will reconvene in public session in the council chambers to complete its business on today's agenda, including reporting out on any actions arising from its closed session portion of the meeting, passing a confirming bylaw to confirm the proceedings and decisions from the meeting, and adjourning the meeting. Is there going to be lunch out there? So 12:30, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Gibson.
Excuse me, ma'am, can I have your license and, what? Huh. City of Brampton license, nice job. Did you know that your City of Brampton license is the most visible thing when the dog's found on the street? As an animal control officer, this helps us get little Fluffy home and back to you safe. Minimizes the amount of stress to not only you as the dog owner, but also the dog or the cat that comes into our shelter. It's the safest way and the best ticket for your animal home.
It's back to school time and kids aren't the only ones who'll have to brush up on their ABCs. Remember, be alert when driving in school zones. Follow the speed limit, watch for flashing 40 km/h signs, and obey no parking and no stopping signs. Blocking a fire route when you're dropping off or picking up your children is dangerous, even if it's just for a few seconds. In an emergency, these few seconds can make all the difference to first responders. And finally, watch for the crossing guards that are helping students cross the street. A crossing guard's stop sign has the same legal authority as a stop sign at the intersection. Stop when the guard has their stop sign in an upright position. You must remain stopped until the children and guard have safely cleared the entire roadway, not just your lane. Not obeying this law could mean 3 demerit points on your driver's record, increased insurance, and a fine up to $500. More importantly, it could mean seriously injuring a crossing guard or a child. Please be careful out there. Let's all work together to make this a safe and happy school year.
The city of Brampton is Canada's people-powered economy. With over 600,000 residents, Brampton is the 9th largest city in Canada, the 4th largest in Ontario, and the 3rd largest in the Greater Toronto Area. It is easily accessible via Pearson International Airport, major highways, and regional transit routes. Brampton's economic advantages, exceptional infrastructure, and lifestyle attributes have attracted the headquarters of some of Canada's leading brands. Brampton has the largest inventory of designated vacant land with over 2,800 acres of employment land. Brampton's advanced manufacturing sector accounts for 23% of Brampton's total labor force, with 1,300 companies employing over 51,500 skilled workers. This sector accounts for over 30% of Brampton's economic output, employing industry giants such as Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, MDA Space Missions, ABB Incorporated, Aircraft Appliances, and Almag Aluminum. The advanced manufacturing sector has access to graduates from institutions like Sheridan Center for Advanced Manufacturing and Design and Magna's Technical Training Center, both located in Brampton. As part of the Greater Toronto Area, Brampton is within the largest pharmaceutical and biotechnology cluster in Canada. Brampton employs 11,700 people in over 250 companies like Medtronic, Taro Pharmaceuticals, Dynacare Medical Laboratories, and Canadian Blood Services. The business services sector is excelling in Brampton, employing over 30,500 employees in over 1,350 companies. This sector grew 11% in the past 10 years. Brampton is at the heart of Ontario's food cluster. It's the 2nd largest in North America and supplies 75% of all processed food and beverage products in Canada. The food and beverage sector in Brampton employs over 16,700 people in over 1,700 companies like Loblaw, Bacardi Canada, Coca-Cola, Unilever, and NAFTA Foods and Packaging. Located in Ontario, Brampton is a part of the 2nd largest information and communication technology cluster in North America. The Brampton Information and Communication Technology sector is comprised of over 275 companies and employs over 7,800 people. Brampton is within driving distance to major universities and colleges throughout the GTA that offer over 40 university-level and over 30 college-level programs. These graduates help fuel the growth of this sector. Brampton's ideal location provides easy access to a major transportation network with access to air, rail, and road. Brampton is home to CN Intermodal, the largest inland rail terminal in Canada. Over 158 million consumers are within a 24-hour drive. The retail, administration, and logistics sector employs over 42,800 people in over 2,200 companies. At the heart of Brampton's success and the strength of its future is its people-powered economy, a young, skilled, educated, and growing workforce.
I am Brampton's energy supply.
I am Brampton's growth market. I am Brampton's pulse.
I am Brampton's breakthrough technology. I am Brampton's innovation.
I'm a Brampton entrepreneur.
I am Brampton's future.
I am Brampton's success story.
Brampton. We are the people-powered economy.
Hi everyone, my name is June. I'm the Education Coordinator for Brampton Animal Services. One of the questions I constantly get asked is, what does the city do about wildlife? And the short answer is that the city will help sick, injured, and orphaned wildlife because those animals unfortunately don't have a chance at surviving. We do want to help them if we can. The follow-up question I get to that is that what does the city do about nuisance wildlife? Will it help, for example, if there's a raccoon in my attic or a skunk under my shed? And to that, the answer is the city will not come out and remove those animals. We are not a wildlife removal company. However, we can provide you some information on how to humanely ask those animals to leave. There are some things you can do to gently coerce those animals into leaving if you don't want them there. The best thing you can do is something called humane harassment. That is making the area less attractive to wildlife so that they don't feel safe there anymore. They want to move on. Some things you can do using humane harassment: shine a light, right? And then that way a nice, dark, safe place will not feel safe anymore for that animal. If you do have an outside food source, such as a green bin, if you feed your cats outside, or if you have a bird feeder, you might want to consider securing or even taking them away. If you have to remove an animal, we do ask that you do so humanely and use a very humane wildlife removal company. Choose a wildlife removal company that is aware of the biology of the wildlife. For example, in the spring and summer months, unfortunately, a lot of baby animals are actually orphaned. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call. We'll be happy to answer them. But other than that, we hope that you enjoy your wild neighbors.
Welcome to Brampton Fire and Emergency Services Fire Life Safety Education Center, home of Stephanie's Place.
At our center, our 75-minute program combines technology, hands-on learning experiences, and a classroom-style setting in a fun and safe environment.
Our main classroom is modeled after a typical home. And what we do is that we encourage children to come into this home and to find potential fire and safety hazards. And with that, they go back home with their families and they show them and teach them what they learn. One of the things I like to ask the students is, are your parents here? And if your parents aren't here, how are they going to learn about what you're learning? What do you have to do? Go home and tell them.
Working with both school boards in the region of Peel, the Stephanie's Place program complements the grade 1 and grade 4 curriculum.
Using our 4 smart tables and a smart board, students learn fire safety through a number of game-based applications.
We are supported by Brampton Council and city leadership, and it is this support that helps us bring free programming and free busing to our local schools and community groups.
Students are very excited to be experiencing something outside of the classroom. There's it's one thing to have the learning going on in class, but they seem to get more out of it when it's outside of the classroom. So I think that they'll remember more of this than they would of something in class.
We love what we do here. In our partnership with the city, school boards, teachers, schools, and community groups, together we're making Brampton a safer place to live.
Excuse me, ma'am, can I have your license and, what? Huh. City of Brampton license, nice job. Did you know that your City of Brampton license is the most visible thing when the dog's found on the street? As an animal control officer, this helps us get little Fluffy home and back to you safe. Minimizes the amount of stress to not only you as the dog owner, but also the dog or the cat that comes into our shelter. It's the safest way and the best ticket for your animal home.
It's back to school time and kids aren't the only ones who'll have to brush up on their ABCs. Remember, be alert when driving in school zones. Follow the speed limit, watch for flashing 40 km/h signs, and obey no parking and no stopping signs. Blocking a fire route when you're dropping off or picking up your children is dangerous, even if it's just for a few seconds. In an emergency, these few seconds can make all the difference to first responders. And finally, watch for the crossing guards that are helping students cross the street. A crossing guard's stop sign has the same legal authority as a stop sign at the intersection. Stop when the guard has their stop sign in an upright position. You must remain stopped until the children and guard have safely cleared the entire roadway, not just your lane. Not obeying this law could mean 3 demerit points on your driver's record, increased insurance, and a fine up to $500. More importantly, it could mean seriously injuring a crossing guard or a child. Please be careful out there. Let's all work together to make this a safe and happy school year.
The City of Brampton is Canada's people-powered economy. With over 600,000 residents, Brampton is the 9th largest city in Canada, the 4th largest in Ontario, and the 3rd largest in the Greater Toronto Area. It is easily accessible via Pearson International Airport, major highways, and regional transit routes. Brampton's economic advantages, exceptional infrastructure, and lifestyle attributes have attracted the headquarters of some of Canada's leading brands. Brampton has the largest inventory of designated vacant land with over 2,800 acres of employment land. Brampton's advanced manufacturing sector accounts for 23% of Brampton's total labor force, with 1,300 companies employing over 51,500 skilled workers. This sector accounts for over 30% of Brampton's economic output, employing industry giants such as Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, MDA Space Missions, ABB Incorporated, Aircraft Appliances, and Almag Aluminum. The advanced manufacturing sector has access to graduates from institutions like Sheridan Center for Advanced Manufacturing and Design and Magna's Technical Training Center, both located in Brampton. As part of the Greater Toronto Area, Brampton is within the largest pharmaceutical and biotechnology cluster in Canada. Brampton employs 11,700 people in over 250 companies like Medtronic, Taro Pharmaceuticals, Dynacare Medical Laboratories, and Canadian Blood Services. The business services sector is excelling in Brampton, employing over 30,500 employees in over 1,350 companies. This sector grew 11% in the past 10 years. Brampton is at the heart of Ontario's food cluster. It's the 2nd largest in North America and supplies 75% of all processed food and beverage products in Canada. The food and beverage sector in Brampton employs over 16,700 people in over 1,700 companies like Loblaw, Bacardi Canada, Coca-Cola, Unilever, and NAFTA Foods and Packaging. Located in Ontario, Brampton is a part of the 2nd largest information and communication technology cluster in North America. The Brampton Information and Communication Technology sector is comprised of over 275 companies and employs over 7,800